Yeah, Yvonne, you were there until recently. Have you sort of seen this, to Bill's question about, is it getting worse and is there more to come, or have we reached a point where, this is as bad as it gets? I mean, what's sort of your sense of the trajectory of this and the kind of pressure and the pressure that your husband felt and therefore your family felt? Do you see this as something that is going to be more routine now?
That's a difficult question to answer. I think for a long time, perhaps we hoped that things would get better because people always said that. You go through these peaks and troughs, and after there's a crackdown, there's an opening up. This has always been kind of accepted wisdom. But things have only been going in one direction for the past 10 years, effectively. And I think that it is only going to get worse. I feel that officials in Beijing are worried. I think they are concerned about the international message. I think they blame international journalists for that. I think that we're very much seen as a problem. And I don't think it's going to get any better. I think that it is only going to get worse. And I think that we're ending up in a situation now where the people who are allowed to stay in China on a full, year-long visa are doing so because they haven't kind of come across the radar of the officials. The officials aren't angry with them over their reporting. And I think what they would like is that to continue to have a number of foreign press in Beijing, but to make sure that they are compliant. And I think the problem with that is that it ends up as kind of window dressing for the government. As long as they can get rid of all the people who cause trouble, and then keep the people who compliant with what they want to project as an image. And I think that is obviously a huge issue for foreign reporting.
Yeah, and of course that sets up a new standard, right, for who is going to be allowed to stay. I wanted to ask a question, and I'm going to ask Gerry this first because he was caught in this. So during the Trump administration, there were constant threats about revoking visas and work permits of Chinese journalists, those working for state-owned media, as well as those employed by other news organizations, including some Western news organizations. The Biden administration has signaled it will loosen some of those restrictions, but obviously has been talking tough on China, including just this week at the G7 and NATO meetings. How do the actions of the U.S. government contribute to the tensions, this kind of so-called tit for tat kind of arrangement? You mess with our visa, we'll mess with your visa. And are journalists increasingly caught in the middle? And is this really the case now that we're going to see going forward? And Gerry, as you are somebody who one could arguably say was caught in the middle, tell us what you think about that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think the framing that this is, explicitly a tit for tat issue has been the messaging from the Chinese, from the beginning. When I was, a day before I left China, I had a meeting with the foreign ministry in which they said, this is not personal. If you have a problem or if you're angry about, being forced to leave, then, you should take it up with your government because they're the ones who started this. And I guess I would say that, on some level, I think there certainly was a cycle of sort of, recriminations and tit for tat coming from both sides. At the same time, I also believe that, it is probably a false equivalence to say that the work that American journalists do is the same as what a reporter for Xinhua and what a reporter at CCTV does. I think that, sort of in terms of editorial independence, in terms of just the essential function and our reason for being, right? These are sort of, very much different systems. So I would be wary of making that direct comparison to say that, well, China is justified in doing what it did, or that this is a kind of a pure sort of tit for tat situation. I'm not sure I'm really qualified to say whether Trump administration should have done what it had with the Chinese state media reporters. But I think that, at least from the Chinese perspective, if the Biden administration were to back off and to let some Chinese state media employees back into the U.S., China would probably oblige. And with visas for American journalists, and it's it might be one of those issues that can be separated out. As Biden has said that they want to sort of work together on things like climate while maintaining kind of an overall posture of strategic competition. It's I don't see why sort of journalist visas is one of those things that necessarily continues down this death spiral.
Chris, do you have thoughts on that? And and particularly on that false equivalency issue, which is an interesting way to put it.
Well, I'd address this issue from a slightly different, broader perspective, which is, quite apart from the specifics of the tit for tat of questions of reciprocity about journalist visas. It's an undeniable fact that these actions have been taking place at a time when there's much more tension in the relationship, particularly between China and the United States. And I would say a much more ideological edge to that tension as well. And because so many of the stories that we do are, they do touch on these sensitive issues for China, the Chinese government, there's no denying it. Xinjiang, Hong Kong, human rights, the image and standing of Xi Jinping himself. All of these issues are sort of bound up with the Chinese government's perception that it is in this time of much more intense ideological contestation. So I'm not saying that journalists are then warriors in that contest, but it's an unavoidable fact that some of these stories that we do, on their merits, do become a part of this sort of discourse of, if you like, of contestation with the West. And I think that's sort of, part of one of the sublayers that lies behind the expulsions. And I think what we would say is seems to be the fact that the Chinese government is not eager to welcome us back as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. We have some other good questions. I'm going to ask one now. This is from Eric Wishart, who's with the AFP in Hong Kong and is on the board of the FCC there. He wants to ask about Xi Jinping's recent call for China to develop a more lovable image. Is that possible? And did China overplay its hand with its wolf warrior diplomacy? So this isn't as much about journalism, but about China's image. Who would like to take that? I'll throw it open. Great.
Yeah, I think the wolf warrior diplomacy, I think is obviously it's such an interesting topic, and I think people have kicked it around a lot recently. After I left, the Chinese embassy in Dublin issued a rather bizarre statement, which kind of went viral. It was about it was quoting an Aesop's fable, and it was about the wolf and the lamb, and how China is not a lamb, sort of indicating that China will bite back if they're upset. And I think certainly in Ireland, that comment from an official channel in the wake of the departure of an Irish journalist really did kind of make people realize that I got a lot of messages from people who felt that this was not in order, and they felt that they had kind of overstepped the line. And I think that's kind of representative of a lot of in public opinion. Sometimes it can have quite a negative effect. And I don't think, though, that it's necessarily going to change. I think it is very much a theme and a style. And that's become synonymous, and I'm not sure that there's any call to change that. I'd be interested to hear if people agree, but I can't see that changing anytime soon.
Yeah, Gerry, do you have thoughts on that? Whether there's kind of this blowback, any kind of, blowback to the whole wolf warrior, or is this, this is just another thing that the world will just have to live with?
Yeah, I find sort of the messaging coming out of China to be sort of incredibly contradictory. I mean, it's quite clear that the likes of the wolf warrior arms of the government apparatus are in the ascendancy. They have continued to carry out their messaging with without any apparent sort of restraints or kind of efforts to rein them back in. And at the same time, there's the edict coming down from on high that we need more positive messaging. It seems to sort of be a kind of a perennial desire from the top leadership to kind of spread more positive energy, quote unquote, about China. And it's just very difficult to see how these dueling mandates get how you square the circle. It's just, I really can't see any easy way for them.